Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Students, welcome to virtual session of week 7 of IT project management course. If you can listen to me properly, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. So today we are going to talk about IT project time management. In our area, we were talking about in our face-to-face class. I left a few of the slides. But today I'll be doing is I'll be giving you a revision of the whole lecture, and at the end of the lecture you can ask questions if you have any regarding midterm exam. So let me share slides with you. I have modified these slides as they were available on the blackboard. I have added some. Is it clear? Is it clear now? Is my voice clear now? Okay. Maybe it's because of bad throat. I'm having a problem of bad throat, so you may be feeling my voice as different. I'm using headphones. It's not far. Okay. Is it better now? Okay, I'll try to speak a little more louder. Okay, so let's move to the lecture. I'm skipping a few slides which were about. So the lecture was about project time management. These are the learning objectives. Now, why it is important to develop project skills? Every project has a particular duration, has a time limit for its completion. So why it is important to develop project schedules? Because the managers consider delivering a project on time as the biggest challenge, because it is one of the elements in the triple constraint of project. A project should be within the budget, it should be developed within the time and as per the requirements. And also because time has the least amount of flexibility, it passes no matter what happens on the project. So time will keep on passing whether you are working on the project or not working on the project. And the third reason is that because schedule issues are the main reason for conflicts on projects, especially during the second half of the project. Come on, baby. Students, can you listen to me? Okay, sorry for interruption. Schedules are the main reason for conflicts on projects, and especially during the second half of the project when the whole team is feeling the pressure to complete the schedule, complete the project on time. And this is the pain curve. If you are doing good planning, the pain curve will be higher in the initial time. But if you have not done proper planning, then due to poor planning, the pain curve remains down initially, but when the deadline is near, the poor planning raise the pain curve very high. So if you have planned everything very well, initially you will be feeling pain, but after that there will be no pain, and near the deadline, the dotted line is showing the deadline, there is no pain. But if you have not done proper planning, then near the deadline, the pain curve will be very high. Time management is also important because when you are working on a project, you are working in a team, and the team members have different work styles and cultures, and which is the reason that the conflicts arise. It is one dimension of the Meyers-Briggs Type Indicator which focuses on people's attitude towards structure and deadline, and some people prefer to follow schedules and meet deadlines while others do not. J's versus P's. I've placed a slide about it. These are the Meyers-Briggs Type Indicator, that some people are extroverted who get energy from outer world. Some people are introverted who get energy from inner world, like they like working in isolation and they are self-composed and they like to focus on their own self. The extroverted people feel more happy when they interact with the outer world. Some people are sensing and they focus on practical applications. And some people are intuitive, which are like in the category of N, which looks for patterns or they look for possible meanings. Some people are thinking who make logic-based decisions. So for everything they look for logic about it. And some people are having this indicator, which means they make values-based decisions. So they follow the set pattern, so the values, they follow values. Some people are judging, they are very planned and organized. So when they are working, they want to work with a planned and organized team. And some people are perceiving, they are flexible and spontaneous. They don't take the work very seriously, they don't plan for work, they are flexible, but they are spontaneous as well. That sometimes you may be expecting that they have done their work, but they will surprise you that they have not started it. Or if sometimes you might be expecting that they have not done their work, but they may be coming up with an excellent work. So such kind of people are perceiving. So because every human being belongs to one of these type indicators, so they work according to their personality types. So because they are working together, so the personality types conflict. Because of this, the conflicts about schedules arise. These are the processes of project time management knowledge area. First of all, you define activities, then you sequence activities, and you identify and document the relationships, and then you estimate activity resources, like how many resources project team should use, and how much resources will be used for each activity. Then you will estimate the duration of activity, that how long that each activity can take. Then when you have resources, when you have activities, the dependencies, the resources and durations, then you develop the schedule. And when the schedule is developed, then you look at the schedule and see that how it goes, and if there is some deviation or changes in the schedule, you control the changes. Now, define, sequence, estimate resources and duration. Schedule is the planning task, and controlling of schedules is the monitoring and controlling task. Activity or task is an element of work normally found on the work breakdown structure that has an expected duration, cost, and resource requirements. And when you say you are defining an activity, it means you are making a detailed WBS, where you are writing every activity in detail. So in activity list, you write activity name, its ID, and its brief description. And when you write the attributes of activity, so you provide more information about the activity, like what is its predecessor, what is its successor, what is the logical relationship, what are leads and lags. We are going to see this in a short while. Resource requirements, what are the constraints on this activity, which are imposed dates and assumptions. Now these are the few slides I have added to tell you about leads and lags. Flow is, when it comes to each activity in the project, there are 4 parameters for each related to the timeline. These are early start time, earliest finish time, latest finish time, and latest start time. Earliest start time for an activity is the earliest time an activity can start when the previous dependent activities are over. So if the previous activities on which this activity was depending are over, so you can start this activity. So this is the earliest start time. Earliest finish time will be the earliest start time plus, which is ES, plus activity duration. The latest finish time is an activity can finish without delaying the project. So you are performing an activity, so how much you can delay this activity so that your project finish date is not delayed. And latest start time is latest finish time minus activity duration. And when you say float, the float time for an activity is the time between the earliest start and the latest start, or between the earliest finish and the latest finish. So this is called the float time. And during the float time, an activity can be delayed without delaying the project finish date. For example, if you see this, now this is the previous activity, this is the current activity, this is the earliest start of this activity, this is the earliest finish, and this is the latest start of this latest finish of this activity. So it means you are performing, this is the duration of activity. This blue is showing the blue rectangle is showing the duration of activity. So this is the earliest start, and this is the earliest finish, and this is the latest finish. So you can start this activity a little late as well. So for example, if this is the duration, so if you subtract the duration from latest finish time, so the activity can be performed over here as well. Okay, so this is another way an activity can be performed. And the activity can be performed in this way as well. So if you see the latest finish time, and if you see the early start time, so the actual time where it is starting, so both of these things are showing the float. Now in project management, there are 4 types of dependencies between activities: finish to start, finish to finish, start to start, and start to finish. Finish to start means later task does not start until the previous task is finished. Finish to finish means the later task does not finish until the previous task is finished. Start to start means the later task does not start until the previous task starts. And start to finish means the later task does not finish until the previous task starts. The lag is the time between the start dates of the 2 tasks. For example, if task A is started at this time and task B is started at this time, so the difference between the start dates of task A and B is called lag. Lead, if the relationship between task A and B was finish to start, it means later cannot start until the first finish. Then the lead can be illustrated as this, like task B started prior to task A with a lead. So task A had to finish at this time, but task B has started earlier, so this is the lead time. Now I have explained this for you because it was mentioned in the activity attributes that in activity attributes you note down the leads and lags. So when you are executing your project, then you note down the leads and lags of each and every activity, whether you have performed it or you have planned it or going to perform it. Now a milestone in a project is a significant event that normally has no duration. So milestone is the event without any duration. It often takes several activities and a lot of work to complete a milestone. They are useful tools for setting scheduled goals and monitoring progress. For example, containing customer sign-off or completion of a specific product or completion of a specific part of the project. These are the milestones. Now once you have defined your activities, then you want to sequence those activities. It means you are reviewing activities and determining that either the activities are dependent or independent. The dependency or relationship is the sequencing of project activities or tasks. It means you are sequencing them in a way that the activities which is not dependent on any activity will be started first, and then the next activity which is depending on first will be started, and so on. So all types of activities that can be there. There are 3 types: mandatory dependencies, discretionary dependencies, and external dependencies. Mandatory dependencies are the ones which are inherent in the nature of work. So you cannot avoid them. So like one activity 1 has to be completed, to start activity 2. These are type 2 dependencies. These are also called as hard logic. The discretionary dependencies are defined by the project team, sometimes referred to as soft logic. For example, the team member will be saying that we can start this before starting that activity. So we should start this, it will be better for us. So if it's based in their opinion, although there is no hard logic for it, but they prefer to create these dependencies, which are called discretionary dependencies. And external dependencies are a relationship between project and non-project activities. Like for example, if the person is not available, you want to that person to work on a particular activity, then this is external dependency. Or you want to work on an activity, but the equipment required for that or the infrastructure required for that is not available at that time. So it means it is depending on that availability of that infrastructure. So this is the non-project activity. So these are called external dependencies. Now, when you are sequencing your activities, to show activity sequencing, you use network diagram, which shows the logical relationship of project activities, and you use two formats. One is arrow diagramming method, and the second is precedence diagramming method. This is the diagram which is showing arrow diagramming method, which is showing activity and arrow. That's why we are calling it arrow diagram, because activity is on arrow. Now these all letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. These are showing the activities. So the activity can be anything, like A is like planning, B is like getting customer sign off, C is like something else. So, and the number written beside this is showing the duration of this activity. Like for example, A equal to 1 means activity A has a duration of 1 day. And when you have made the start, it means like activity A, B, and C can be started at the same time. After 1 day, activity A will finish. After 2 days, activity B will finish, and after 3 days, activity C will finish. Once activity A is finished, activity D can start. So it means activity D is dependent on A. Once activity B is finished, activity E and F can start. It means E and F are dependent on B. And when activity C is finished, activity G can start. It means G is depending on C. And then when activity D and E are over, activity H can start. So it means H was depending on D and E. And when activity H, F, and I are finished, then activity J can start. So it means J was dependent on all three. So this is how it is showing the dependency. Now, if you see this diagram, and you have to make a table, how can you fill it out? So, what will be the duration of activity A? Can anybody tell me what will be the duration of activity A? It will be 1. What is the predecessor of A? Predecessor means activity before A. No, if there is no activity to be performed before A, so there is no predecessor. What is the duration of B? It's 2. And the predecessor is no. There is no predecessor of B. And let's see about F. What is the duration of F? F. It's 4. Right. And what is the predecessor of F? What is the predecessor of F? Predecessor. It means the activity performed before F. It's B. Before, because activity F is here. Before activity F, activity B should be performed. So once activity B is over, then activity F can start. So this is the So if let's talk about I. What is the predecessor? What is the duration of I? 2, right? And what is the predecessor of I? Yes. So in this way, we make a table like this. We write activity, their duration, and their predecessor, that which they are depending on. Okay. And if I ask you the predecessor of H, first of all, the duration of H, which is 6. Okay. And now the predecessor of H. So what is the predecessor of H? Predecessor of H is D, E, D and E. Okay, because H will be starting when activity D and E will be over. Is it clear? Okay. So this is called activity or arrow network diagram. Activities are represented by arrows and nodes and circles at the starting and ending point in activities. But this can only show finish to start dependencies. See, like we can only see that like finish to start. So when activity can start, when activity E and F can start when B is finished, D can start when A is finished, H can start when D and E are finished. So this is can only showing the finish to start dependencies. But we have other types of dependencies as well. This is the process of creating this diagram. The other type of diagrams are called precedence diagramming methods, where you represent activities by boxes and the arrows shows a relationship. And it is more popular than arrow diagramming method and is used by project management software as well. And it is better at showing different types of dependencies. As I told you, that dependencies can be finish to start, start to finish to finish, and start to finish. And we use these symbols to represent these dependencies. Like if there is finish to start, it means B cannot start until A is finished. You show this is this type of arrow. If it is start to start, it means B cannot start unless A has started. Finish to finish, B cannot finish until A has finished, and this is shown by this type of arrow. And start to finish, B cannot finish until A has started. So this arrow, the arrow which is coming from this side, shows the start to finish dependencies. Now you know that as you can see here that you can show different types of dependencies by using the arrows. So how you are structuring the arrows, how you are placing them, it depicts the types of dependencies. This is more popular, this is more detailed, because in the arrow diagramming method you are able to show only one type of dependency. But in this diagram we can show 4 types of dependencies. And this is a sample CDM network diagram where you can see activities. The same for the same activity on arrow diagram, arrow diagram which we made. This is the for the same one. This is the CDM network diagram. Now you can see here that in the boxes you are representing the activity A. You are mentioning the start date, finish date, ID, duration, and the resources it requires. So all activities A, B, and C can be started at the same time. So you can see here that activity A had 1 day duration, B had 2, C had 3 these activities. Now once activity B is over, then E and F can be started. So it is showing the finish to start dependencies. So now you can see here that you have specified the duration of activity E, F, G in this way. So this is another way, and you can see here the same way that the J is the last activity. So as you can see here in this diagram, the J was the last activity. You had 3 days duration. The same is shown over here, and we have mentioned the IDs as well. So we know now that how many activities are there, and you have specified their duration as well. So is it clear so far? Okay, good. Now, you have made a diagram, either activity or error diagram or precedence network diagram, to show the dependencies of activities, to show the sequence of activities. Okay, now you have to estimate for activity resources. Before estimating activity durations, you have to estimate the quantity and type of resources that will be required. Consider important issues. Consider important issues in estimating resources, like how difficult will it be to specific activities in this project, what is the organization history in doing similar projects, and are the required resources available. Because you can perform activities smoothly if all the resources required for that are available. If they are not, then activity cannot be performed smoothly. Now, when you have the resource requirement for activity, the next step is to estimate the duration of activity. The duration includes the actual amount of time worked on the activity plus elapsed time. Now you will be wondering what elapsed time is. For example, like if you say that activity duration is suppose 10 days, so you may not be working on activities on 10 days. You may be having some time for meeting. You may be doing some planning. So all the time will not be spent on that activity. So, and sometimes when you make the estimate for activity duration, for example, if I ask you to do a work, the work requires 6 days, you'll ask me for 8 days. So this is the elapsed time which you have added. So effort is the number of work days or work hours required to complete a task. Effort does not normally equal duration, and people doing the work should help create estimates so that the difference between duration and effort is the minimum. We use, instead of providing the duration estimates ourselves, it is better to involve the team in this process, to involve the people who will actually be working in that activity. So you can provide them, like, I want this work in 4 weeks, but sometimes that may be too less time or too much time. So it is better to involve the people in this activity. So what we do is that we make a 3-point estimate, an estimate which includes an optimistic, most likely, and pessimistic time. For example, 3 weeks for the optimistic, 4 weeks for the most likely, and 5 weeks for the pessimistic estimates. And these types of estimates are needed for PERT and Monte Carlo simulations, which you'll be seeing in the short file. Now, to develop the schedules, we use the results of the other time management process to determine the start and end date of the project. So the ultimate goal is to create a realistic project schedule that provides a basis for monitoring project progress for the time dimension of the project. So it should not be the case like you develop a schedule which is unrealistic, and as the project moves on, you keep on revising the schedule all the time. So it's not a good approach. If you have developed your schedule very carefully by involving all the team members, then there should be minimum revision in the schedule. Gantt chart provides a standard format for displaying the project schedule information by listing project activities. So, and it uses black diamond symbols to represent milestones, thick black bars to represent summary tasks, light or horizontal bars to represent the duration of task, and arrow shows the dependencies between tasks. Now you can see here that this is the Gantt chart made for the same project, which we made for which we made the network diagrams. So you can see there the task name, activities A till J, and you can see that activity A was of 1 day, B was of 2 days, and C was of 3 days. Now once activity A is over, the activity D can be started. Once activity B is over, activity E and F can be started. So you can see here that this time is mapped on the calendar over here, and you can see that what is the duration of the real project. And this is the Gantt chart, same Gantt chart showing summary tasks, milestones, and the arrows are showing dependencies. Many people like to focus on meeting milestones, and why we add milestones in the Gantt chart, because the people who are deadline oriented like to receive the deadlines, like to receive the milestones, and the milestones also give them a sense of accomplishment if they have meet the deadline or if they have accomplished something, and it has zero duration. Milestones should be specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, or time frame. You should be able to tell that whether you have achieved the milestone or not. It should be measurable, how successfully you have achieved. It should be assignable, that who has reached this one, who is responsible for it. Is it realistic, and it should be time framed. These are the best practices to make milestones. Like define milestones early in the project, keep them small and frequent. The set of milestones must be all-encompassing. Each milestone must be binary, meaning either it is complete or incomplete, and you carefully monitor the critical path. Now this is the sample tracking Gantt chart, which is watching the slipped milestone, the real milestone, the planned dates, and the actual dates. Now CPM is a vector diagramming technique used to predict total project duration. This CPM is the critical path method. So what critical path is? The critical path for a project is the series of activities that determines the earliest time in which the project can be completed. Like, what is the earliest time in which the project can be completed? The critical path is the longest path through the network diagram and has the least amount of slack or float. So as we have talked about float, so the float is the minimum. So it is the amount of time the activity can be delayed without delaying the succeeding activity or the project finish date. Now how we calculate the critical path? We first develop a network diagram, then add the duration estimate for all activities. The longest path in your CPM the network diagram is the critical path. If one or more activities on the critical path takes longer than the plan, then the whole project will be delayed. For example, in this diagram, if we see the paths A, D, H, J, B, E, H, J, so you will see here that the longest path is path 2, which is B, E, H, J, because it is saying 16 days. If any activity on this path is delayed, then the overall duration of project will be delayed. Now, what is the duration of this project? Can any one of you tell me what is the duration of this project shown in this diagram? What is the duration of this project? So can you hear me? Okay, yes, the duration is 16 days. So it means, like, if any activity on the longest path is delayed, if activity B is delayed, or E is delayed, or H is delayed, or J is delayed, the overall project duration will get delayed. Our project team at Apple Computer put a stuffed gorilla on the top of the cubicle of the person currently managing critical tasks. So it means the critical path is not the one with all the critical activities, only accounts for time. So at Apple Computers, what they are doing is that they are putting the stuffed gorilla at the top of the cubicle of the person currently managing. So when the second person will be managing critical tasks, so they'll place the gorilla over there. And can any one of you tell me what is the purpose of that? The purpose of that is to signify that that person should not be disturbed. He or she is working on the critical task. If her activity will be delayed, then the overall project duration will be delayed. So they provide that person all the resources and all the time. The critical path does not mean that all the tasks on it are critical. It is only counts for time. For example, the growing grass was on the critical path for Disney's Animal Kingdom. Now what is growing grass? I have added this slide. Growing grass can be on the critical path. People are often confused about what the critical path is for a project and what it really means. Some people think the critical path includes the most critical activities. However, the critical path focuses on the time dimension of the project. The fact that its name includes the word critical does not mean that it includes all the critical activities in terms of scope, quality, resources, or other areas. For example, Frank Adiman, Executive Project Director at Walt Disney Imagineering, explained in the keynote address at May 2000 at PMI ISSIG Professional Development Seminar that growing grass was the critical path for building Disney Animal Kingdom theme park. This 500-acre park required special grass for its animal inhabitants, and some of the grass took years to grow. The project manager did not assign his top people to watching grass grow. He did use this information, however, to delay the start of other more expensive activities to make effective use of resources. Another misconception is that the critical path is the shortest path through the network diagram. In areas such as transportation modeling, multiple network diagrams are drawn in which identifying the shortest path to the goal. So this is the slide that I have added to tell you that all the activities. Yes, to see the critical path is the longest path. Now, in the critical path, few terms are important: free float and total float. Free float, also called free slack, is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the early start of an immediately following activity. And the total float is the amount of time an activity can be delayed from its early start without delaying the planned project finish date. So this is the difference between free float and total float. A forward pass through the network diagram tells you the early start and early finish dates, and the backward pass tells you the latest start and latest finish dates. Okay. Now what is free float or total float is, you will come to in a short while. In precedence diagramming method, so when you are making an activity diagram, what you do is that you write early start, early finish, latest start, and latest finish date in this way. And when you make your diagram, CPM diagram, what you do is that when you are starting a project, you are starting at 0. If the activity A has duration of 5 days, so when you are taking a forward pass, it can be started at the 0th day, and the earliest finish date is 5 days. So, and you can see here that activity B has 10 days duration. The earliest start for activity B is 0, and earliest finish, because it has 10 days duration, so 0 plus 10, the earliest finish is 10 days. Now, the activity C, now you see here that activity C, this activity is finished after 5 days, and this activity will finish after 10 days. But C cannot be started once both of them are finished. So the earliest start for C is 10 days, and the earliest finish for C is 10 plus 7, 17 days. Now let's see the latest finish. The latest finish date for C is 17, and the latest start is 17, and the latest start is 17 minus 7, it's 10. Now the latest finish for activity A is 10. You are placing it over here because this is the earliest start, so you can place 10 over here. And the earliest late start is 10 minus 5. 10 minus 5, you get 5. Or 10 minus 10, you get 0. So when you are doing forward pass, what you do is, when you determine this date, you add this date with this duration, and you get this number. When you get this number, you add it with this number, duration, and you get this number. But when you are going to determine the values of late start and late finish for all these activities, what you do is that you start in the reverse order. This is called backward pass. You first see this, then subtract this duration from 17 and you get 10. And now this 10 will go over here and over here. Now you subtract the duration from this 10, 10 minus 5 you get 5, 10 minus 10 you get 0. So with forward pass you get early start and early finish, with backward pass you get latest start and latest finish. And this is a diagram which is showing the dependencies, just like the predecessors. Now you only have to calculate total float and free float. Total float is the difference between the late start and earliest start. So it gives you 5 minus 0, it's 5. And free float is 10 minus 5. So this is representing the free float. And this is the diagram which we make, the table which we make when you manage actual start, finish, late start, late finish date, and free float and total float. Slack and float means the same. So this is how when you develop the schedule, you enter the real dates, like activity A can be started at this date. This is the earliest finish date. This is the late start date. This is the late finish date. This is the free slack in it. This is the total slack in it. Okay, so when you make your CPS diagram like this, then you make this table. Now our next purpose is to shorten the project schedule. To shorten the project schedule without changing the project scope, the two techniques can be used. One is called crashing and the second is fast tracking. So whenever you have to reduce the schedule, for crashing, when you adopt the technique of crashing, you look at cost and schedule trade-offs. For example, you add or remove resources, change the sequence of activities, because if you change that, then it results in increased costs. But it's not always coming with result. Like you spend more cost to apply more resources to shrink the schedule, but it's not very effective. Fast tracking is perform sequential critical path activities in parallel and overlap them. Can result in rework and increased risk, but needs better communication and planning. So by fast tracking, you can reduce the schedule if you are having excellent communication among team members and you are, you have made a very good plan, then fast tracking can be effective. So as your project moves on, it's important to update the critical path as well, because the critical path may change when you enter actual start and finish date. So it doesn't mean that once you have made your critical path in the beginning of project, it will remain same. Sometimes the critical path may be totally different during the middle of the project when it was planned initially. A method for scheduling that considers limited resources when creating a project schedule and includes buffers to protect the project completion date is called critical chain scheduling. Like we are considering that we have shorter time, we consider limited resources to complete, like what is the minimum time in which we can complete the project. And we use the theory of constraints, a management philosophy developed by this person, and it tends to minimize multitasking when a resource works on more than one task at a time. So for example, when you're saying that we are deploying minimum resources and we are following the theory of constraints, let me look at this example. Consider a relatively simple system of physician's office or clinic. The steps in the process could be patients checking in, filling out forms, having vital signs taken by the nurse, seeing the physician, seeing the nurse for prescribed procedures such as vaccination and so forth. These steps could take place in a simple linear sequence or chain. Okay? So when your patients are coming to the physician's office or clinic, they first of all they are checking in, they are filling out forms, then their main vital signs are noted by a nurse, then they see the physician, then the nurse see them according to the prescription given by physician, and then all these steps are followed in the same order. This process or chain only can produce an average of 8 per hour. Like for example, from this chain, from this process, 8 patients per hour can be seen. The chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and the rate of the slowest resources in the example, the weakest link, is 8. This is true regardless of how fast each of the other resources can process individually, how much work is stuffed into the pipeline, and how complex the process or setup is to complete. Like if you improve the performance of physician, like if all of them are seeing 8 patients in a chain in 1 hour, if any nurse, either nurse or the person filling out the form or the physician himself start performing quickly, it will not increase or not reduce the duration, or it is not going to increase the number of patients seen in 1 hour, because everybody else involved in the chain is following the same pace. Even if the physician is faster, so that there will be a crowd accumulated with the nurse who is had to, or if the person who is checking in or filling out forms for patient is faster, so they will make a queue with the nurse. If the nurse is faster, they'll make a queue with the physician. So the total time will not reduce if any one of the resource starts performing faster. This is the concept behind critical chain. Now, this is what we saw, that without multitasking, the task 1 completes after 10 days, 2 after 20 days. And if you apply multitasking, so task 1 completes after 20 days, after 25 days, task 2 completes, and then after 30 days, task 3 completes. Now, when you talk about critical chain, buffer is a concept which is used. A buffer is an additional time to complete a task. Murphy's law states that if something can go wrong, it will. Like, for example, if you have in mind that this thing will go wrong, it will go wrong. Or you should see the worst case. The Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time allowed. If I ask you to do a work in 1 day, you will do it in 1 day. But if I give you 1 week for that work, you will do it in 1 week. So the work will expand to fill the time allowed. So you will work according to the time given to you to perform that work. And it's very true as well. In traditional estimates, people often add a buffer to each task and use it if it's needed or not. Like if an activity requires 2 days and you are asked to tell that how much time it is going to take, you will tell 3 days. So what you have done is you have placed a buffer of 1 day with you, that in case you get sick, or in case you don't feel working efficiently, or in case you work slowly, so you will be completing it in 3 days for sure. So this is an individual buffer you have kept for you. You may have said that I will be able to complete it in 2 days if that was 2 days work, but you will say 3 days. And this is that's a very usual approach, that people add a buffer with each task for them. Critical chain scheduling, what it does is that it removes all the individual buffers and instead creates 2 buffers. One is called project buffer and the second is called feeding buffer. Like, make a realistic estimate, remove all the buffers of everyone, remove all the buffers added with every task, and make 2 huge buffers. One is project buffer, which is added, additional time added before the project due date, and the feeding buffer, which is added before task on the critical path. And this diagram is showing the feeding buffers and project buffer. FB is showing the feeding buffer. Now you can see here that this was a critical chain. So you have added the feeding buffer before every task on the critical chain, and you have added a project buffer before the completion date of the project. Like if your project even gets delayed, you will utilize this project buffer. Or if your any activity on the critical path gets delayed, you will utilize this feeding buffer. So this is how feeding buffer helps you out. Now we talked about PERT in the previous slide, and I tell you that this is the time estimation technique for about activity duration. So this is a metric analysis technique used to estimate project duration when there is a high degree of uncertainty about the individual activities. So we use these estimates, and this is the formula. Like you take optimistic time, 4 times most likely time plus pessimistic time, and divide it by 6. So you get the real estimates. And these are the suggestions for schedule controls. So when you are a project manager, you perform reality checks, you allow for contingencies, allow for emergencies. Don't plan for everyone to work at 100% capacity all the time. Sometimes one people will be working with 100% capacity, sometimes will be 20% capacity. So allow them to work at different capacities. Don't expect them to work with 100% energy level all the time. And hold progress meetings. And to have progress reports, to have some schedule control system. And keep on reviewing the schedule, prepare detailed schedules, make them realistic, and alert top management in advance if there are schedule problems. So this is how you should go. You should use empowerment, empower your employees, give them incentives, make them disciplined, negotiative with them if there's sometimes issues are arising. So when you are assigning someone tasks, empower them to perform that task, make them responsible. If they perform good, give them incentives so that they perform more quickly next time. And you can use some softwares to assist in time management as well. As I told you, that communication helps to people to exchange schedule related information, and they can improve their work if the schedule is short. And but when you are using the time management software, project management software, you should not expect that everything will be given to you as alert by the software. You should not rely on that too much. See the actual and the real progress. And this is the summary of this project, and that's all about it. So the lecture is over. Now I want to know if you have any question about it. And this, as you know, this lecture is included in your final exam as well. Sorry, midterm exam as well. And the midterm exam is scheduled on 19th of March. If I'll receive some information about the midterm question paper, I'll share it with you on the blackboard. Okay? Thank you very much.